overrated, underrated. Notre Dame is the number 5 team in the country. A Notre Dame team that doesn't have Riley Leonard as their starting quarterback right now. A Notre Dame team that every year manages to lose a game that they shouldn't lose to some random school that most of us didn't even realize they were going to be playing. Every year, Notre Dame trips on itself once, and then we come into it, we're like, I don't know, they're going to make the college football playoff? So where are you? Number 5, overrated or underrated on Notre Dame?
I think Notre Dame is overrated. And look, Notre Dame didn't get to the national championship game because of Riley Leonard, because of their quarterback play. Now, a big part of it was because Riley Leonard didn't make stupid mistakes to lose any other more stupid games other than Northern Illinois. But Riley Leonard did what he was supposed to do. And Riley Leonard's legs were a massive weapon and a massive threat for Notre Dame last season. But I think that they are overrated because they lost so many other pieces on that team. Now, what it does give me encouragement is they have continuity at offensive coordinator. I think Mike Denbrock is a brilliant offensive coordinator. They bring back Jeremiah Love, who was one of the best running backs in college football this past season. But with an addition at quarterback with very little in-game reps in college football, losing so many pieces on that defense, which were, I would say, the number one reason why Notre Dame was represented in the national championship game, to say that they are a top 5 team preseason with so many pieces that they're forced to replace is just a little bit too rich for my blood. So I'm going to say Notre Dame, while I do think they'll be a solid contender this year, mostly because of their fairly weak schedule, nonetheless, I think that Notre Dame is just slightly overrated.
You're going to nonetheless that? You just threw all sorts of mayonnaise all over the Notre Dame party with that. And then you nonetheless, I mean, look, they've got, okay, they start with Miami, then Texas A&M. They have Arkansas in there. I'm struggling to find
Arkansas, who's the 14th best team in the SEC?
Yeah, well, it's boy, you're right. It is paltry when you look at the schedule. Okay, never mind. I can't defend Notre Dame.
And look, that's nothing new. Notre Dame plays a rinky-dink schedule every single year. And look, they scheduled Miami. I'll give them credit for that. They scheduled Texas A&M. They'll give them credit for that. But the rest of their schedule is what? Navy?
USC.
I do respect our troops. But.
Okay, that is 100%. We don't want to get back to
not the triple option.
You're right, and this also becomes part of the conversation we always have in Notre Dame, and why I agree that they're overrated. They don't get any wiggle room because their schedule doesn't allow it. So as this season goes on, the only thing Notre Dame will have is the eye test. They're going to have to go out and absolutely look disruptive on all 3 phases of the game to continue if they make up for any sort of an error. So I'm with you. I will take overrated. It seems to be a theme for me. I may do this a lot. Overrated at the number 5 spot for Notre Dame. Okay, so we agree on that one, and we have the luxury here of not having to decide who to put in their place yet. Georgia at number 4, and Georgia at number 4. I don't know, Caroline. You're living in SEC country. You watch this. I mean, it's the same old story with Georgia. They've got amazing recruits and the best talent in all the land, and they've got great coaching, and we just got to figure out what the quarterback situation looks like.
So Fitz, first and foremost, above all else, I am a hater. And so I will continue my trend of overrated for the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia led the country, this past season in drops. They add Zachariah Branch from USC to their receiving core, but their issues with drops will continue because their receiving core is largely the same of what it was last season. And the addition of Zachariah Branch doesn't change that for me. And they lose their starting quarterback, Carson Beck. Gunnar Stockton comes in. And look, Gunnar Stockton showed some good flashes in the SEC championship game and their college football playoff game against Notre Dame, but he also made some really brutal mistakes. And so Gunnar Stockton coming in as a first-time starter, it gives me pause. Their wide receiver issues, their pass catching issues, it was bad last year. It wasn't even just, that was a weakness. No, it was flat out bad, worst in the country. So I understand that Georgia and Kirby Smart will continue to get the Georgia and Kirby Smart benefit of the doubt, but that was a team with flaws last year. And then you add even more question marks at the quarterback position. Overrated for the Georgia Bulldogs.
Yeah, I got burned pretty heavily last year coming into the season for expecting Alabama to underperform. It turned out to be right. I think Georgia is in that same category this year. I'm with you. I think it's overrated. So there's going to be too much chaos in the SEC for Georgia to get away with. You mentioned not only was it the worst last year in college football, I believe it was the worst of all time on drop rates. So that is concerning for me for a Georgia team that has too much talent, but I can't trust their wide receivers to catch the football. I don't know who's playing quarterback, and you never know who's going to get a speeding ticket at that organization. So it's just there's too much of a cluster all across the board for me to feel good.
And their schedule fits. They go to Tennessee, they play Texas, they play Ole Miss, they play Florida, they play Alabama. That is a brutal gauntlet of a schedule, and we oftentimes overlook that when it's Georgia or Alabama or Texas or Ohio State, but that is still a gauntlet of a schedule. But I look at the number 3 team in the country preseason, Penn State. I mean, they came off a trip to the college football playoff. Do they deserve to be the number 3 team in the country, Fitz?
God, no. Like, I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing? Like, if you had to bet yesterday you bet your house and my house. Today, I'm betting our boss's house. Like, I would bet my boss's house that Penn State does not win a national championship. Why? Because they don't know how to do it. Because James Franklin he isn't him when it comes to being able to win that game. And if your answer is, well, Drew Allar, I've seen all of the pre-draft hype for Drew Allar. Last year, Penn State acquired, I think, one of the smartest minds in all of college football as their offensive coordinator, and they had a first-year advantage with it. You have a first-year advantage of what's it going to look like with this Penn State team. And they took advantage of none of that. Early on in the season, they were pushing the ball further down the field, which I think was important. Everybody adjusted to that. As everybody adjusted to it, now I don't feel like it's a cheat code this year. Like it feels to me like everybody's had the whole offseason to figure out what Drew Allar is going to look like in this new offense, which wasn't the case last year. I've still got a coach that I don't trust in a big game to get out there and get me that win in that big game. I've got a quarterback that I think is being overhyped right now on a team that's good, but I mean, they also lose Tyler Warren, who was a huge part of that offense last year. They lose Abdul Carter, who was a huge part of that defense last year. The losses and the gains don't stack up for me. Penn State, I would not be surprised at all to see Penn State caught by a lot of the Big Ten this year.
So this is where we differ, because I actually think Penn State is underranked at number 3. They bring back Drew Allar, and the continuity at the quarterback position, I think, is the greatest currency in college football. And I think that's the reason why LSU gets a lot of hype in the offseason, and bringing back Garrett Nussmeier, Cade Klubnik at Clemson, same thing. Continuity at that position just doesn't exist very much so anymore in college football and the transfer portal. So I think bringing back Drew Allar, who had legitimate in-game experience in the college football playoff, will be invaluable. Yes, they lose Tyler Warren. You don't replace Tyler Warren. And no, you can't replace Abdul Carter. But I think the biggest issue with Penn State last year was they didn't have anybody that could catch the football, not named Tyler Warren. And James Franklin acknowledged that and went into the transfer portal, brought in guys with SEC experience, with a lot of experience. They replaced defensive end Abdul Carter with Anaya White out of Texas A&M. The continuity, what they did in the transfer portal, and also they bring back Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. They're 1-2 punch, I think the best running back duo in college football this year. The only reason why I think people are saying that Penn State is overranked is because they haven't done it before. Because James Franklin at Penn State has a horrific habit of winning the games he's supposed to win and not winning the games that he's not supposed to win. And in order to be a national championship contender, you have to win those games that you're not supposed to win. The Oregons, the Washingtons, the Ohio States, the Michigans on Penn State's schedule. Just because they haven't doesn't mean they can't. I've kind of fallen in love with this Penn State squad, so I'll say they're even underranked in this preseason poll.
Wow. Well, this is our first massive Yahoo Sports Daily disagreement. We've got a big old, we're going to have to put a bet on this one because I'm out on Penn State being a top 5 team at the end of the year. How do you like that? I saw the tweet that was up there.
Is it because they always lose to Ohio State?
Well, I mean, in part, yeah, yes, in part it's because they always lose these games. So why would they not? But also the tweet that was up from Penn State recruiting that said, Drew Allar's got a chip on his shoulder. He didn't have a chip on his shoulder last year. And again, I think last year was the bigger advantage with play calling because you could take more people by surprise. I think, yeah, you got one of the best offensive lines in the country. That is, of course, important. But the concept that Drew Allar is going to go off this year, based on what? I mean, he averaged less than 6 yards an attempt against the Notre Dame defense in the playoffs. It was actually really good. But also he averaged less than 6 yards an attempt versus an Oregon defense in a shootout. Like I have no proof of concept that makes me think Drew Allar is going to come out and golden god it at this point. So I don't see that. And Singleton and Allen will make defenses respect the pass. Did we not see what that defensive line did last year to make quarterbacks fear throwing the football? For what? Like, at the end of the day, Penn State is a good football team. They are not a top, to me, they're not a top 3 football team. They're a fringe playoff team. They'll make the fringe of the playoff, and it'll be cute, and then they'll lose in like the first round of the playoffs.
Their schedule, they start the season at home against Nevada, then FIU, then Villanova. They get Oregon at home. Then they go on the road at UCLA. Ooh, scary. The Northwestern at home. They go on the road to Iowa. I'm not scared of Iowa. They do go to the shoe. They go to Ohio State. Then at home against Indiana, at Michigan State, at home against Nebraska, then on the road at Rutgers. I see one game there in which Penn State will be a dog. I think that Penn State could walk to 10-2. And if they win one game they're not supposed to, Oregon or Ohio State, they'll be 11-1 and probably a top 3 seed in the college football playoffs.
I got them at 10-2, and they'll lose one game they shouldn't. So that might be 9-3. How do you like that? Look at that. We'll put an over under on it.
Who are they losing to?
Oh, they'll lose to somebody.
Northwestern?
They'll lose to somebody. I mean, maybe
that is one thing I will give James Franklin credit for. He doesn't lose games that he's favored in.
I mean, they could lose to, number one, they could lose to Oregon. We're all out on Oregon just being worth anything. I'm not willing to be as out on Oregon as people are out on. So they'll lose to Oregon. They'll lose to Ohio State. So that's 2. But then, I mean, you never know. Like maybe this is
10-2. You're a top 10 team.
10-2, top 10, first round playoff loss when they play a good team. They're a playoff team. They're just barely a playoff team. And they can pick up that third loss against, I want to say Indiana, but I can't say that with a straight face. I want to say Michigan State, but I can't say that with a straight face. Like they'll pick up a third loss against somebody. Iowa? No.
Indiana was a cute story last year, but the JMU transfers can't save you now, Kurt Signetti.
Do you believe that Ohio State or Texas 1 and 2 will lump them together? Are they sufficiently ranked? Are they underranked 1 and 2?
Well, you can't be underranked if you're ranked number 1. So I think the only option is
to be number 2. Would you flip them? Would you put Ohio State 1?
No, I wouldn't. And I think that all comes from the quarterback position, because I have more faith in Arch Manning than I do with whatever Ohio State is going to do at the quarterback position. Is that totally biased because his last name is Manning? Probably, yeah. A little bit, and I think that's the bias that we all have, is that we're all expecting Arch Manning week 1 to come out and look like a Heisman Trophy favorite, which I think we need to temper our expectations. We've seen very little from Arch Manning. We've seen him start against UT San Antonio and a few snaps against Mississippi State, who was the worst team in the SEC last year. So let's temper our expectations. There are going to be growing pains as far as Arch Manning is concerned, but he isn't one of the highest ranked quarterbacks in the history of high school recruiting for no reason. And I think that Steve Sarkisian and this Texas coaching staff has put a ton of weapons and pieces around Arch Manning. They have enough continuity from last season. They bring back their leading rusher in Quintravian Weisner. They bring back 3 of their top 5 leading receivers from last year's squad that really, honestly, probably should have beaten Ohio State if Sark didn't make the most numbskull play call at the goal line against Ohio State in the college football playoff semifinal. So I think with the quarterback and just all of the hype that Arch Manning has and the pieces around Texas, and that has more continuity than Ohio State, yeah, I do buy Texas over Ohio State. But even at number 2, I think Ohio State is overranked.
Yeah, I'm learning I'm not buying any of these teams because I'm with the quarterback problems with Ohio State. New offense makes me uncomfortable. And look, until I see otherwise, I am not going to join the parade for Arch Manning until we've actually seen it on the field. You and I talked about this last year when we were covering college football, but Sark needed a mobile quarterback to help down the stretch when Quinn Ewers was hurt, and he chose not to play Arch Manning. That to me says something. Not only do I think Arch is going to need a learning curve, I don't think Arch is going to be in the draft. I think there's going to be 2 years of Arch Manning at Texas, and all of these people that are freaking out about Arch are about to be wildly disappointed.